Welcome back to Light the Fuse, the only Mission Impossible podcast truly obsessed with visual effects.
Yes.
Truly.
This is part 3.
Of 5.
Of 5, yeah.
Yeah.
But part 3 of 3 with Stu Maschwitz.
Who's amazing.
And today we get into a lot of other projects he's worked on in his career, which is really cool to talk about. Talking about Bong Joon-ho and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's really cool.
Yeah. I wanted to also bring up...
So you haven't dropped the bombshell.
The bombshell about the hat?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You ready for it?
You ready for this, everybody out there? The hat from Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol that we wanted to get.
The crew hat with the 4 dots.
Yes,
From Bad Robot.
4 dots that we posted pictures of Brad Bird wearing it, and we will post those again. And then you will also now see pictures of us wearing the hat because we got the hat.
Yes.
We did it.
Yes.
A huge thank you to Seth Worley, who got us this hat. He did a job for Bad Robot, and he was able to get this hat. He is a director as well, and he was out here in LA, and I met up with him. He was doing some work on the Sony lot, and I dropped by, said, "Hey, what's up?" He gave me the hat. Very, very nice of him. He said he wants to get lunch next time he gets to town.
I'm excited
so we're
about
gonna
that.
have to get lunch with him. He says he loves the podcast. I'm so excited about that. It's so cool. It's so great to find people who are interested in Mission Impossible the same way that we are.
Yeah. Keep in mind, Charles did this all in secret, and then
Yes.
and then told me about the hat after he had gotten it.
I wanted to
Which is
surprise
great.
you in the show, in a recording, but I was too excited. It was
That
like
hat,
a
let
week
me tell you,
ago.
this hat is beautiful.
Yes.
It's
sad that we only have one.
Yeah.
So we have to trade off back and forth.
yeah. Well, someone else will give it to us.
I almost want to get it like framed in a box and put it in our little recording
Yeah,
closet
yeah.
here.
We'll put the figure up. We'll put the yeah.
So very exciting. We're gonna post pictures of
Yes.
us in the hat. You're
Yeah.
gonna see the hat. We got it. Everybody, it happened.
It's amazing. It's amazing. this podcast really is making all sorts of dreams come true.
I know. We thought we were gonna get arrested breaking into Bad Robot, getting one of those hats. But maybe we need to still to get a second one.
Right. Well, you were in Bad Robot,
I was for
a job.
It was a general meeting.
but you saw the
But
gloves.
I saw the
gecko
gloves. Yes, I don't know if you saw that on Twitter, but I posted a photo of they have in the lobby of the Bad Robot offices. They have the glove from Ghost Protocol and the goggles in a framed case.
Yeah.
And they had a little doll of Tom Cruise,
Which
I think
I have,
is the
yeah.
same one that you have.
Yeah.
Yes. They also, I didn't post the picture, but they also have the board game from the '60s
Oh, cool.
in there too, which I wanted to just pull out and start playing. But they
Right.
were like, "You have a meeting, sir. You need to go."
Right. Charles thought he was there to tour the building, but he had a meeting. How'd the meeting go? Are you in the running for maybe 9?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I don't know if Bad Robot's going to do Mission Impossible anymore.
No.
Right? Because are they not? They're doing their deals
Yeah,
with
but
Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
now.
but he's got a show on Apple, and he's directing this
Right.
movie for Disney. I don't know if you've heard of. It's called Star Wars.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So he's all over the place. So
Yeah.
I don't think he's
So
locked
maybe.
down. Maybe he is now.
We'll
You're
see.
right. I don't know what
It's
the
gonna
deal,
be-
the
we're gonna-
terms of this Warner Media agreement are. But.
Yeah. It'll be interesting if he's still like contractually tied to Mission Impossible.
Well, you know what's so funny too is that part of that deal was that he was supposed to have theme park attractions.
Really?
Yeah, and it's weird that he went with Warner because every studio was vying for him, and Disney was vying for him, and you'd think that he'd go, "Oh, I'll go to Disney."
Warner Brothers doesn't even have a park.
No, they have a
just
licensing
they have a deal
agreement with Six Flags. Yeah, they used to own Six Flags, but now they just have a licensing agreement. So,
Huh.
yeah, just
Wow.
another theme park connection there. But, so we're gonna throw it over to Stu. Right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
it, and we'll be back afterwards to wrap it up. Well, you talked about your favorite movie being Die Hard, and then you worked on Live Free or Die Hard.
Yeah.
Were there some mixed emotions there?
Yeah,
Or-
I mean, look, first of all, if you look at my filmography, like, I've made a bit of a career of working on everyone's least favorite movies. But yeah, for me that experience was more about my takeaway from that was that was where I started to get really interested in color correction, because I've gone on to design a bunch of color correction plugins and tools for Red Giant, and that film was kind of coming off of what was it, Underworld, that the director had done prior. It was like this, a film that couldn't exist without digital color correction. You just couldn't make a movie that blue without computers, I guess. So we learned a lot about like how our visual effects pipeline was going to interface with kind of the world of like, we used to work really hard to, sort of predict what our shots would look like when they were shot onto film. And now we had to work really hard to make our shots robust enough to withstand a pretty aggressive kind of like music video style color correction in post. It was Siggy Firstel at Company 3 who was the colorist on that. And I sat with him for a day and watched what he was doing to our shots and then went back and said, hey, guys, we're going to have to really make sure that like all of our edges are clean and all of our sort of like levels of detail and contrast on all the texture maps are consistent because they are going to run this through, a pretty aggressive look at the end. And it was a fun project. I love, it's like, it's a VTOL jet attacking a truck on a crumbling freeway. It's all the stuff I love to do. So the sequence that we worked on was fun, and to be a part of the Die Hard pantheon in any way at all is pretty awesome. So I have nothing bad to say about that whole process. It was pretty great for me.
Oh, that's great.
That's cool. What about did you work on the first Iron Man?
Yeah, that was my my business partner at the time, John Rothbart, was just a super fan and really wanted to be involved in that. And that was like Marvel before Marvel knew what Marvel was, right? So again, we had this kind of cool, the buzz around that movie and the idea that Robert Downey Jr. was going to be in it and was kind of re-emerging into the popular culture, and we had a strong sense that we were working on something cool there. And again, that was a proud moment for our little company because ILM was doing the bulk of the work, but ILM was still using RenderMan, and they couldn't do ray traced reflections in the way that we could because we were using this, kind of ray traced energy conserving renderer called Brazil. So we had done this test. Which John conceived himself. That the test was this kind of scene of Iron Man kind of facing off against this like tank thing or whatever, and doing that cool bit where he walks away. That was all our sequence that John just made up and submitted it as the test. And it won us the work, and then they wound up putting that sequence in the movie. So
yeah, that sequence is awesome.
Yeah, so it's a very proud moment, and I was really pleased that we, for me it was like, to leave ILM and start our own visual effects company in 99, 2000. And to a few years later have our work cutting up right against ILM's in a movie like that was, is an important moment for us, and something I was really proud of for John, because big accomplishment for him. He's gone on to have a awesome visual effects supervising career as well, and deservedly so.
Yeah. Were you working at all in collaboration with the late great Stan Winston?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there was a lot of crosstalk about, kind of the suit and how much of it could be practical and what it should look like, and the materials, and we had pieces of it around and things like that. So I can't remember if John got to actually, I mean, I'm sure they must have, because John was on set for the entire shoot, so they must have had some interaction, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah. So you said you worked a bit on the special editions, and it looks like you also segued into doing Phantom Menace. And I know there are a lot of mixed thoughts on that movie, but I think the visual effects were groundbreaking in so many ways. I just would love to hear if you had any thoughts on that process or anything that went on there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one funny story, which is that, we kind of knew that the Rebel, John Knoll was taking on a third of the movie. That's how they did it. They split up. There was kind of the Scott Squires unit, the Dennis Muren unit, and the John Knoll group. And we knew that John would be doing the space battle. And as the Rebel Mac unit, we knew that we would probably have some work to do on that. It turned out to be 300 or more shots. So it was an exciting time, and at the proper moment, I was given the opportunity to read the script for the new Star Wars movie, which was extremely exciting.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I couldn't, like leave the room with it, right? I had to sit in the production office and read the script and then walk back over to my, crew of like half a dozen people and tell them what we would be doing. And it was that, like, here's the thing, like, remember how many doubters there were about the original Star Wars? Like, how many people even saw rough cuts of it and were like, it's okay, George, your next movie will be good, Um, so I, so I read the
De Palma
script and I
being one
didn't-
of them.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, so I'm never really quick to form an opinion about like a creative work, right? But one thing I was absolutely sure of, I was 100% sure, given the secrecy around this, in my mind, in my like head canon, I was 100% sure that the scene about midichlorians was put into this script to be able to track whoever leaked the script. In my mind, I was absolutely certain that couldn't possibly be actually in the movie. I was like, that's a fake scene designed to get me fired if something about it shows up in the press. And I did not turn out to be correct about that. But I don't say that in any way to be disparaging. I'm just saying, like, quite honestly, that was my impression. And I don't know how I managed to, like, I guess that's just how sort of, like, desperate I was to, like, connect what I was reading to what I cared about Star Wars,
Right.
But, from that moment on, it was like, John went off and shot all the plates and came back, and we had many, many, many spaceship shots to do. And it was, again, this wonderful collaboration where, like those big kind of donut-shaped ships were all done with practical models. There's a lot of practical model work, a lot of motion control, but then we would get those plates in. We'd actually get the motion control camera data, and we would bring that into electric image, and so we'd have the matching camera moves to get everything lined up, and we had a rough CG version of that ship so we could cast shadows on it and things like that. And then we did this very detailed model of the Naboo starfighter, and it did a lot of really fun animation of these little yellow hot rod spaceships flying around. And so again, from my perspective, really fun project. And yeah, little did I know it was continuing what would become a proud tradition of mine, which is that I tend to work on the movies that people have very strong opinions about.
Well, I would say a lot of the movies you've worked on have strong opinions in a favorable way. I mean, The Host and
Sure.
Sin City, Men in Black. I mean, these are all really great movies. Obviously,
Yeah.
Mission Impossible, we're obsessed with. Did you also work on Blade Runner? Was it the final cut? Is that what you worked on?
Yeah, I did. Again, that was in cooperation with my buddy John. There was a bunch of just kind of restoration work that we did, but I guess probably the main thing that I did, and this was really fun because that's a movie that probably I think I owned that movie on Laserdisc before I owned a Laserdisc player. I think before I really owned anything that cost more than a Laserdisc, I had that. I would just study that movie endlessly. And, it only takes a few times watching that movie before you're like, in the way that I was, where you're like, okay, cool. You can kind of see the wires holding up that practical spinner, or, oh, it's kind of obvious that that's a stunt double crashing through all of that glass or whatever. So, I love that, final cut of Blade Runner. To me, it is like the canonical version of like how you restore an old movie respectfully, bringing back director intent, that had been lost, but not doing like retroactive, kind of reimagining of what the movie should have been. I think even like the color correction on it looks like what we remember the movie looking like, not, like some modernized version of the movie, even though it's pretty detailed. But there's in the original film, there's a shot where Deckard is like running through the Bradbury building, and he's at this point, you know, all we're hearing from Rutger Hauer is just his voice kind of echoing off the walls, and Deckard's freaking out, and he runs into a room, and there's it runs past this giant wall, and then a light swings, and you just see crystal clear, like to the point where you could tell what brand of cargo shorts he's wearing. You know, a camera operator with a giant Steadicam strapped to him, being followed by a dude with a, you know, pulling focus. I mean, it's like you could like read the logos on his T-shirt from the last movie he worked on, and and I just remember thinking, well, that's sure in that movie. Like that's it's just you know, films were different before CAV Laserdiscs, I guess, you know. So I got to sit in a flame suite and work with a talented artist, just cleaning that up, you know. And the funny thing about that was that, you know, they were working on this 4K restoration, which was pretty, you know, groundbreaking at the time. And in that particular case, they had not been able to get the camera original negative. They had only gotten an interpositive print, so they had a scan of a print just for that shot. And that's what we worked on, and we finished it. And they were like, great, it looks great. Hey, guess what? We just found the negative. And so they scanned the negative and sent it to us. And of course, the geometry of it is completely different. The color is completely different. So we just started over and did the whole shot again. And that was the attitude of the team doing that restoration, was just like, this is, you know, I mean, it was like this, you know, ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It's just like, you're just going to sit there with your little brush, and you're just going to, like, you know, peel away the dust until the beautiful painting is there. And that's what's important. Nothing else matters. So we did the shot again. And,
wow.
And it's, you know, there's like smoke in the air and light shafts and whatever. It's a pretty complex process. And I mean, that's just one silly little example, but that was that was one of those just labor of love of like, you know, I'm working on a shot that I'm actually gonna just, in a movie that I would just sit back and just enjoy because I love it so much, you know.
Well, is it the part of the show where I have to ask the big questions, Charles?
Yeah, well, maybe actually, let me just ask you one last question, because I'm curious about Slugline. So I've been, you know, since I was a teenager, I was writing on Movie Magic Screenwriter, and then since then I've switched to Final Draft, and then back to Movie Magic, and those screenwriting programs, it's amazing how little they have changed in 20 years or more. They are incredibly frustrating, and so I would love to hear about Slugline and what that is and how it's better, because I assume it probably is.
Well, it's kind of a case of, I mean, I hope it is for some things, and the thing for me, you know, I've written screenplays and I've made some films, and I find the writing process to be kind of underserved by that kind of software. Software engineers seem to be very comfortable adding features that have more to do with like production than with just kind of the touchy-feely kind of I'm slowly going crazy alone here in a room part of the writing process.
Yeah, how about just a decent spell check? I honestly, neither of the programs have a decent spell check. It drives me out of my mind. Some of the words they don't have in their dictionary are it's maddening.
Well, and then what's happened, of course, is that, you know, now, like, basically, if you write kind of a Mac native piece of software, you get all that stuff for free. Like, Apple just gives you that stuff, you know. And the thing that the birth story of Slugline actually comes out of a desire that I had to create a open and simple file format for screenwriting that was just plain text. So when I write my blog posts for ProLost, I write in a format called Markdown, which is like a, you know, tiny subset of HTML, and basically you're just writing in plain text. And if you want to make something, you know, in italics, you just wrap it in asterisks, and then when it gets turned into HTML, that gets turned into the proper tags and all that stuff. So I had kind of fallen in love with this kind of lightweight text-only way of writing rich text, and it occurred to me that screenplays could be the exact same thing. Like, the format is so simple that there's no reason that as you're writing you should have to be saying like, oh, this is dialogue, this is a shot, this is a scene. You should just write the stuff, and like a computer should just be able to figure out, hey, that starts with int, that's probably a scene heading. That is a name in uppercase, and then there's some text right after it. Well, that's probably a character in dialogue. And so I really just kind of wanted to make this file format, honestly, and I happened to kind of collide with screenwriter John August, who had the same idea, and so we collaborated on this format called Fountain, and then I just wanted to make a little app that could just edit Fountain files, basically. And what wound up kind of coming of that was an application that is very minimal and very friendly to just the creative writing process. It doesn't have any features for production, like locking pages, marking revisions, whatever. Like, it's very bare bones, but it is kind of just the place where you can just type stuff that looks like a screenplay, and the formatting happens automatically. And in that way, a lot of writers who I respect and admire have fallen in love with it for the creative, kind of explorative part of their writing process, which is exactly the part that I felt that was underserved. So I'm really thrilled about that, because if you write it in Slugline and then you push it over to Final Draft for all the like fussy bits of like production and stuff, that's totally fine with me, because I was there with you for the fun, important creative part. So that's why Slugline exists, and why Fountain exists. And the funny thing is that Slugline is the first screenwriting app that doesn't even require itself, because you can write in Fountain with like Notepad or the Apple Notes app or whatever, and just load it into Slugline, and the formatting will all happen automatically.
Oh, wow. I definitely need to try that. I didn't realize that was the same. I'd heard about John August doing that. I didn't realize that was this. Is that Slugline, or that's Fountain? Is that what his is called? Or
yeah, Fountain is the format. John's app is called Highland, and it is compatible with Fountain. And Slugline is a native Fountain editor.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I definitely needed to try those out, because it's Movie Magic and Final Draft definitely leave a lot to be desired.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of come from that tradition of like, I feel like kind of web writing went through this transition of like going from Microsoft Word with its 17 banners full of like floppy disk icons and little Clippy and all that stuff, to being like, just get out of my way and just let me put words on the page, like
right.
And I loved how that kind of transformed my writing process, having written a book in Microsoft Word and then going to like writing blog posts and just like glorious, simple, plain text. I wanted that same experience for screenwriters.
Yeah. All right, Drew, I think it's time.
All right. Well, first of all, we're going to throw in a little curveball here that we've been doing lately, which is we want you to rank Tom Cruise's hairstyles through each movie from your you could do it your favorite to your least favorite, or your least favorite to favorite, but the floor is yours.
Of just the Mission Impossibles?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I rewatched the first one in advance of recording this because I wanted to just kind of steep myself in it a little bit and jog any memories that were lodged. And the thing that is so striking about it is, we think of Tom Cruise as being ageless these days, but it's actually not true. It's just that he's finally kind of like a normal, like in Mission Impossible, he's like 11 years old.
Right.
Like when you go back and you look at it now, you're like, okay, like he doesn't look old now, but he does look young then.
But his hair looks great.
But his hair looks great. Yeah. So
we had controversial opinions about the hair for the first one recently. So I shouldn't lead you that way. I'm curious to hear what you think of his hair.
I'm gonna go with Mission Impossible 2 as peak hair for Tom Cruise. I like a shaggy Cruise.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So that I guess puts Ghost Protocol at number 2. It's basically going to go in descending order of length. I feel like. So does that put the first one at the bottom and for hair?
It might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's pretty shorn in the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. Very like military.
Yeah. No, I like a shaggy Cruise.
All right. Well, now the most important question, which is ranking the Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So, all right, go.
All right. Tiny bit of background, right? So, Die Hard, favorite movie, not because it's the best action movie ever made, but because it's a movie about a husband and wife relationship. Like, to me, that's the killer formula. I think all guys kind of just want to watch romantic comedies, but we want helicopters exploding in them. And, or it's certainly true of me. Like, I unashamedly am drawn to kinetic movies that have a romantic thread to them. So you can probably tell where this is going. My top is number 3.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
By a significant margin. And it is probably it's probably telling in terms of my stance kind of on the whole series, which is that I think, like, when I was watching the X-Files, like, I didn't want to watch the episodes with all the like cigarette smoking man and all that stuff. I wanted to watch the weird outlier episodes, the little bottle episodes, where like Scully and Mulder are like, texting each other late at night or whatever,
Right.
Or like the Rashomon episode where they each have their own version of the story that happened, and in
right.
in Mulder's version, like the sheriff is this like slack-jawed yokel, and in Scully's version, he's this like ripped, handsome dude. Like, to me, that's the juice. So I kind of love Mission Impossible 3 for like what JJ did. I think he thought he was doing that amazing JJ thing he can do, which is he can pull something out of the fire. And I don't think everyone thought it was necessarily in the fire, But he was like, I'm gonna save this, and I think he like oversaved it by turning it into a different movie. So I could definitely see how someone who was like a huge fan of the whole series and sort of the set the vibe that has kind of come to be what the films are, and like how that connects back to the first one. I know 3 is an outlier, but for me, it's an outlier that lands squarely into my zone. It's like all my favorite kind of parts of what of the genre conceits, but just a little bit deconstructed with like whipped cream and a cherry on top in that beautiful JJ way. Amazing performances, obviously. But just a romantic thread, it's like it could have been the last one, except that It was so damn good. Right. I mean, if anything, the movies have like had to like do backflips to account for the fact that JJ made one too good to be the last one,
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Charles, is this blowing your mind over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know it's an unpopular opinion amongst, like devotees, but
no, a lot of people love it.
No, it's
yeah.
No, it's. I think it's. We were talking about this recently because we said it. We on our Patreon we did a commentary for MI3, and there's so many amazing parts in that movie, but I think that one is, for whatever reason, it seems like it's the most polarizing. There are people who put it number 1, and then there are people who put it last.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
There's a kind of there are defenders of MI2, but for the most part, people see it as the worst one. But like MI3, for whatever reason, like it's really strong opinions either way.
Yeah, and so for me, like MI2, like I'm the world's biggest John Woo fan. Like I love him to death. His filmmaking was super influential to me as I was in film school. He came to CalArts and showed his personal print of Hard Boiled to us. I met him afterwards and I gave him a copy of my student film, which he watched and sent me a letter. So I cannot put Mission Impossible 2 last because John Woo is the king. Like
and you worked on Red Cliff, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
which I loved.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's the king. So now that movie is wackadoo, right? But like, but come on, man, like. Tom Cruise was like, hey, guys, I got this idea. Let's put a knife blade like a millimeter away from my eyeball, and then let's have that shot be like a minute and a half long.
Oh, we love that shot. We love that.
I mean,
it's so good.
But again, you're seeing like the groundwork being laid for like what these movies were going to be about, but also just John Woo being like, motorcycles will now be doing a ballet, like,
right.
It's just, it's, yeah, so it's not my favorite, but it's kind of not my favorite for all the like, just the busy work of like.
Listen, if you want romance, there's romance all over that thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's. I mean, yeah. It's great.
So your number one is 3.
My number 1 is 3. My number 2 is the original Mission Impossible. Yeah. And then it's tough, but I think Ghost Protocol is my 3rd.
Okay.
Because obviously The Burge is like, it's like the AT-AT scene in Empire Strikes Back. It's just like, oh, this is why we make movies. Like, this is it. This is what movies do.
Yeah.
But I actually think the Moscow prison break scene is like. So it's such an important piece of like tone setting. I don't know. It's like Brad Bird almost kind of pulled a JJ, and he's like, I need to grab the wheel and show you that I'm in control. And the Moscow prison break scene is that,
And did you talk to your buddies at ILM about how they pulled some of that stuff? Because John came back for that one, which is really interesting.
He did. Yeah. Also, and Paul Hirsch edited it as well.
We got to talk to him, and it was amazing. That's
awesome. No, I mean, just I'm friends with some folks who worked on it, and but at this point, like, kind of. Yeah, I know how this stuff is done. I'm kind of I'm less. Like what I loved about, like the only a visual effects supervisor like John Knoll could oversee that the sort of is the Kremlin, the hallway scene with the sort of cameras that are going to match the perspective of the person who's looking at them. And then when it glitches out because there's 2 people and it's showing you the 2 different perspectives thing, like that is a nerdy, like technically accurate, like in any other movie, there would be just a projection of the hallway. And the people who actually know how life works would be like, that would not work because it would look flat and it wouldn't go in perspective. So for someone to say like, we're going to eyeball track and reproject and like all the like mechanical stuff of that is so good. I love it. I love it because in that way that like, if you're, that like only Jim Cameron can make action movies where the stuff that's happening feels like it's really happening because he's the only one who actually knows how to drive a semi-truck and how to scuba dive and how to, like he actually does all this crap. So like he is not gonna be like, oh, what would be cool is like a spaceship that looks like a butterfly. It's like, no, a spaceship needs to look like this because it needs to work for real. And like, I'm going to make a movie where people talk underwater. Jim, nobody can talk underwater. I'm going to invent scuba gear that allows people to talk underwater. Jim, we're just making a movie. I'm going to invent scuba gear that allows people to talk underwater that people are still using today to talk to each other underwater that didn't exist before we made The Abyss. Yeah. So I kind of love it when attention to detail meets glorious, tense, beautiful editing, amazing filmmaking. So Ghost Protocol's high on the list. Then Fallout, then MI2, then Rogue Nation last.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
You want to talk about why Rogue Nation's last?
I mean, somebody's got to be last, right? That's just the one that I always kind of forget, like, what happens in it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. I have a real problem following the sort of mechanics of that movie.
Me too, well. And no one should take that personally because I get confused in James Bond movies. Like, I just don't follow plot well. I just don't think I care about plot at all. Like, I only care about what I consider to be story, and so you could almost say that, like, these films are kind of ranked in, like, the order of how much primacy I think, like, a personal story takes in them, which should really put number 2 higher, actually, come to think of it.
Yeah?
Now that I'm saying that out loud, maybe I need to maybe I need to put 2 above Fallout. Yeah, 2's going up. I'm moving 2 up. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. 3-1 Protocol, 2 Fallout, Rogue Nation.
Wow. Fallout is that low. That's crazy.
So here's the thing.
But like,
here's the thing about
all the
Fallout.
movies are great in this series. Go ahead, sorry.
They're all great. Fallout is great. I really love Fallout, but I put it that low because it is procedural and it has great scenes, I mean, and it has an amazing structure. It's like nailing it. There's nothing bad about it. But it is, and it has some of the greatest set pieces. Like, I mean, we are talking about like flavors of M&Ms here. Like, it's not, there's none of these are bad, but like, it's just, if I thought about like which one I would want to go watch and like kind of just appreciate, I don't know. I think that one has the recency problem. We've all seen it so recent, and I think it's a little elevated in our minds because the thing I regret a little bit about this series is kind of the arms race nature of the MacGuffins, and the set pieces. It's refreshing to go back and watch the first one. It's just people trying to get a floppy disk. It's the exact same plot as Office Space, and right.
Yeah, I know that's interesting.
So much about Mission Impossible.
The knock list is really just on a disc.
And it would be like a 4 kilobyte file. Like they're like, I'm trying desperately to upload the file, but I got to do it before we get to the channel. It's like, but just it's like 30 names. Like I just write it down. Like I don't take a picture of it with your cell phone. Oh, you don't. You can't do that.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not as a filmmaker, I'm not really into film criticism. I think like filmmakers or aspiring kind of wannabe filmmakers, like I think about movies in terms of like kind of what they give me, and sometimes a movie, like in terms of an experience, and like, caring about what's happening in the movie in kind of a very simplistic emotional way is always going to beat out like the amazing set piece, and if you can give me both, then I'm in, and that's what 3 does. But so my rankings are weird and they mean nothing, and they're all great movies, so
Love that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Stu. This has been awesome. It's been so great to talk to you about everything in your career. It's been
really been my pleasure.
Amazing
as
all
you
the
can
stuff
tell.
you've worked on.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, such a pleasure to talk to you about all this.
It's fun, guys. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate the podcast, and I love the perspective that you're bringing to this, and the amazing folks other than me that you're getting on the show. It's super cool.
Do you want to plug anything before we leave as well?
The thing that I've made most recently that I'm real proud of as a filmmaker is a little short film called Tank, which you can find on Red Giant's website and YouTube channel. It's a little short animated film that is done kind of in the style of like vector graphics video games from the 80s.
Oh wow!
And while you're at Red Giant's website, check out the VFX suite, which is a whole bunch of awesome tools that we just made for doing visual effects compositing at home. And a lot of the stuff that I learned while I was working on these movies is bottled up and kind of in those tools. So if you're at all interested in visual effects compositing, check out what Red Giant's got going on.
Well, great. Well, we really appreciate you being on the show and accepting this mission.
Thank you, guys. This was really fun.
Awesome interview.
Yeah, love.
He was
Stu.
great.
I really loved talking to him. It was great.
Yeah.
I feel like he's one of my favorite. I mean, I feel like every one of my. We've had so many people that are so great that we've talked to, but he really was. We ended up talking to him longer than I expected because there was just so much to talk about. Just in that first movie, the visual effects they did for it is just so crazy.
I told somebody that the knife falling was a CGI element, and they had no idea.
And
Yeah, I mean,
it's remarkable.
thinking about John Knoll on his personal computer doing it. But
I also have something I wanted to bring up.
Go ahead. The floor is yours.
So I rewatched The Firm recently. Okay, this is big. Okay,
I know you rewatched The Firm.
I rewatched The Firm. I was texting you during it, but I held back a few things.
Okay.
Because I wanted to talk to them here.
Okay.
And surprise you with it.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Sidney Pollack.
Yeah.
Directed The Firm.
Right.
It's a great movie. I love it. He was set to direct the first Mission Impossible.
Okay.
Do you remember this?
Yes.
And it's written by Robert Towne.
Right.
Who wrote the first two Mission Impossibles. Starring Tom Cruise. It's sort of almost a prequel to the Mission Impossible series. I mean, it's like, it seems like that was 94, Mission Impossible was 96, so like Tom Cruise was probably like, I really like this team of people, let's bring them back to do Mission Impossible.
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You ready for this extra little bit of connection to Mission Impossible? This blew my mind as I was watching it.
Okay.
The head of the FBI, who Tom Cruise, they take him to I think the Washington Monument or something. They take him to a park, and the FBI goes and tells him to sit down on a bench and talk to this top level guy at the FBI because they're bringing down the firm. They want to bring down the firm.
He's working for a law firm that is laundering money for the mob.
Yes. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler for a 30-year-old movie. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, love that movie. So he sits down on the bench. Who's sitting next to him?
Who?
Stephen Hill.
Really?
Stephen Hill, who was Dan Briggs in the first season of Mission Impossible.
Whoa.
So it's Tom Cruise sitting with Stephen Hill having a conversation. It's so cool. I was nerding out in my brain. I was like, wait a second, that's Stephen Hill.
I wonder if
how has nobody ever talked about this before?
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's like another level of how that's like a weird Mission Impossible connected movie.
I wonder if that's where he got the idea or something.
Yeah. I don't know. He must have talked to Stephen Hill about Mission Impossible.
We have to get some...
Because I wonder if he was... was he on it at that point in 94? I mean, they were probably shooting... Oh, no, maybe The Firm was 93.
I think it was 93. Yeah, it was the same summer as
I think it
Jurassic
must have
Park.
been before he signed up to do it, I think.
We got to get some clarification on this.
Yeah. I think we probably had those dates exactly in the Making of Mission Impossible episode we did. Which, by the way, you should go back and check out. Our Making of episodes are great. And
you know what else you should do? Sign up for our Patreon.
That's... Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's patreon.com/LightTheFuse.
Yep.
Sign up for that. You'll get great stuff every month. So maybe a day late sometimes. But
it always comes.
It always comes. It's worth it. We promise. Also go to TeePublic, get a t-shirt.
Yes. We got great shirts.
Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Please do.
And you have some credits you want to give out?
Yes, I do. Before I do that, though, also, the connection in The Firm.
Oh.
They've got split diopter shots.
That's great.
I don't know. Does Sidney Pollack always do split diopter?
He's kind of a chameleon.
He is. He's great.
He is great.
He is so great.
And he was in Eyes Wide Shut with Cruise at the end of the decade.
That whole big crazy scene by the pool table that Sidney Pollack thought was going to take a couple of days to shoot, and they shot it for 2 months.
Well, that was and it was a part originally.
It was Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, Harvey Keitel. Yeah.
And then he got replaced.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So thank you to all to our Patreon subscribers. This episode is brought to you by Jeremy Dillon. And it's thank you so much, Jeremy, for making this possible. And this episode's also mixed by Luke Burson.
Great. So we'll be back next week with another ILM veteran who contributed to this franchise. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Can't wait to hear this. For you to hear this, Todd Vaziri was awesome to talk to. Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch the original Mission Impossible television show, all 7 seasons are currently available to stream on Amazon Prime. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.